Your brain is replaying a conversation right now. Not the whole thing. Just one moment. One sentence. One weird shift in tone. You told yourself you were done with the conversation. You closed the chat. You put your phone down. You tried to distract yourself. But hours later, your brain drags you right back into it. The moment they said that line, the tone, the pause, the way the conversation suddenly shifted. Maybe it was something small. It's fine, or do whatever you want. At the time, you moved past it. But now something about it feels wrong, so your mind starts replaying the moment. What they said. What you said. What you should have said. Maybe if you answered differently, the whole interaction would have gone another way, and the strange part is, the more you try to forget the conversation, the stronger the loop becomes. Heck, you think you're just overthinking. But your brain isn't replaying the moment for no reason. It's running a social threat analysis. Your brain is trying to answer one question. Did something just change between us? Because conversations like this often decide something you didn't even realize was being tested. Your position in the relationship. Your brain keeps scanning the moment for signals. A hidden tone. A reaction you didn't notice the first time. A sentence that suddenly means something different now. Because sometimes, those tiny signals are real. And your brain knows it. Until your brain answers the question, what just happened? The loop stays open. And once you notice this mechanism, you start seeing it everywhere. Arguments, dating conversations, even casual text messages. Because sometimes the reason a conversation won't leave your head isn't just what was said. It's the uncertainty someone left you with. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why certain people trigger these loops far more than others, and why your brain treats those conversations like unfinished psychological business. Once you notice this pattern, something strange becomes obvious. You don't replay every conversation. You can talk to coworkers all day, chat with friends, exchange dozens of casual messages, and your brain lets most of it disappear instantly. But certain interactions stick. The conversations that haunt your mind later usually look completely normal while they're happening. Not the longest conversations. Not even the most emotional ones. The ones that loop in your head are usually the most ambiguous. Moments where something felt slightly off, but never fully explained. You send a message. They reply, "Yeah, sure." Technically, nothing is wrong with it. But the tone feels colder than usual. Because small shifts in tone can signal something deeper, a change in interest, respect, or emotional distance. Now your brain starts scanning. Oh, did they mean it that way? Did I say something wrong? Hours later, the loop is still running. Or maybe it happens during an argument. You're explaining something important. They suddenly say, "Whatever, believe what you want," and the conversation just ends. No resolution. No clarity. Just silence. Later that night, your brain starts rewinding the conversation frame by frame. The exact sentence. The exact tone. The exact moment the interaction stopped feeling normal. And nowhere is this pattern stronger than in dating. Because attraction rarely disappears in one dramatic moment. It fades in signals your brain can feel, but can't fully prove. Messages get shorter. Replies take longer. The energy subtly changes. Nothing dramatic enough to confront, but enough to trigger one question in your mind. What changed? Not conflict, not emotion, uncertainty. The human brain is built to detect social signals. And when those signals suddenly become unclear, the brain treats it like missing information in a survival puzzle. So it keeps reopening the conversation, looking for the signal it missed. And sometimes the reason it bothers you so much is because your brain did notice a real shift. And the disturbing part is, some people are very good at creating this uncertainty. Instead of random overthinking, your brain is actually running a very specific process. One that activates whenever a social interaction, suddenly stops making sense. When you interact with someone often, your brain starts building a mental model of them. You learn their tone, their texting rhythm, what their messages usually mean. Over time, your brain becomes very good at predicting how they'll respond, so most conversations feel smooth and easy to process. A message arrives. Your brain already has a rough expectation of what it will sound like. But the moment something doesn't match that expectation, your brain registers a prediction error. In simple terms, something about the interaction didn't match the version of them your brain expected. Maybe the reply felt unusually cold. Maybe the enthusiasm you expected wasn't there. You read the message again, then again, trying to figure out why it suddenly feels different. Your brain treats that moment like missing information, and the human mind hates missing information. It's like rereading a message 3 times thinking, why did that sound colder than usual? So your brain reopens the conversation. It scans the words again, the tone, the pause before they responded, looking for the signal that explains the shift. The brain can tolerate rejection far easier than confusion, because rejection is clear. Confusion keeps the system running, and the more emotionally important the person is, the stronger the loop becomes. Now your mind isn't just analyzing a sentence. It's analyzing a relationship threat. Did their feelings change? Did their interest drop? And if that answer is unclear, your brain treats it like a potential loss. Which is why the conversation keeps replaying long after it ends. But once you understand this mechanism, something more disturbing becomes visible. Some people create this kind of uncertainty far more often than others. And your brain reacts to it exactly the way they expect. Once you see this pattern, another uncomfortable truth starts to appear. The conversations that stay in your head the longest usually involve people who give mixed signals. Not the ones who are clearly warm. Not the ones who are clearly distant. The ones who constantly shift between the two. One day the interaction feels easy. They're engaged, responsive, interested. The next day something changes. Replies get shorter. Energy drops. The warmth disappears without explanation. Nothing dramatic enough to confront, but enough for your brain to notice. And this is where the psychological loop becomes stronger, because unpredictability is one of the most powerful ways to capture attention. Your brain starts chasing the moment things felt normal again. You reread old messages, you compare tone, and you replay the last conversation, trying to figure out when the shift happened. And the frustrating part is that this pattern affects self-aware people the most. People who pay attention to subtle signals. People who analyze behavior. People who care about emotional dynamics. Because the more sensitive your brain is to social cues, the more material it has to analyze. You notice things other people ignore. A delayed reply, a slightly colder sentence, a change in enthusiasm. And suddenly your mind has more evidence to process, not less. Which keeps the loop running even longer. But here's the part most people miss. Uncertainty doesn't just create confusion. It also creates attachment. Because when someone alternates between warmth and distance, your brain starts chasing the moments of warmth, trying to restore the version of the interaction that felt good. And the more unpredictable the signals become, the more attention your brain invests in figuring them out. Once you see this pattern clearly, something important changes. You stop assuming the conversation is the real problem, because the conversation isn't actually what your brain is stuck on. It's the uncertainty around the relationship. Your mind isn't trying to perfect a sentence you said. It's trying to answer a deeper question. Where do I stand with this person now? And when that question has no clear answer, the brain keeps searching for clues. That's why you replay tone, why you analyze pauses, why you reread messages looking for hidden meaning. Not because you're obsessive, because your brain is trying to stabilize a connection that suddenly feels unstable. But here's the shift most people eventually realize. The loop in your head isn't always telling you that you said something wrong. Sometimes it's telling you something about the dynamic itself. Because when communication is clear, your brain relaxes. Even difficult conversations can end cleanly. Someone disagrees with you. Someone loses interest. Someone expresses frustration. It might hurt, but your mind moves on surprisingly fast. What keeps the loop alive is unclear emotional positioning, signals that contradict each other, moments where warmth suddenly becomes distance, interest suddenly becomes indifference. Your brain keeps analyzing, because the interaction never fully resolved. And once you recognize this, something subtle changes inside you. You stop trying to win the conversation in your head. You start paying attention to the pattern of signals the other person creates. Because clarity doesn't come from replaying one moment. It comes from noticing how consistently someone makes you question where you stand. Once you understand this pattern, the conversation in your head stops looking like a mistake you made and starts looking like a signal your brain was trying to interpret. Because the loop was never really about finding the perfect response. Your brain wasn't searching for the right sentence. It was searching for certainty, certainty about what the interaction meant. Certainty about whether the connection was still stable. Certainty about whether something had quietly changed. And when that certainty never arrives, the mind keeps reopening the moment. But eventually you start realizing something important. Your mind wasn't trying to fix the past. It was reacting to uncertainty in the present. Because when communication is clear, your brain relaxes surprisingly fast. Clear rejection ends the loop. Clear interest ends the loop. Even clear disagreement ends the loop. What keeps the replay running is when the interaction suddenly stops feeling predictable, the vague responses, the emotional shifts no one explains, the moments where the conversation changes tone but no one acknowledges it, and sometimes the most important thing the loop reveals isn't what you should have said. It's what the interaction itself was quietly showing you. Once you see that, something subtle changes. You stop treating every conversation like a puzzle you need to solve. Instead, you start noticing the pattern of signals people create. Who communicates clearly? Who leaves things unresolved? Who repeatedly creates uncertainty? And when your attention shifts there, the loop slowly begins to lose its grip. Because the question is no longer, what should I have said? It becomes, why did that interaction feel so unstable in the first place? And once you notice that pattern, certain conversations from your past suddenly start making a lot more sense. If you've ever caught yourself replaying a conversation for hours, you're not alone. Your brain isn't doing it randomly. It's reacting to signals that never fully resolved. And once you start noticing those patterns, something interesting happens. Certain conversations stop feeling confusing and start revealing the dynamics behind them. If you want to understand more of those patterns, subscribe, because the more clearly you can see how people communicate, the less power those moments have over your mind.